Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, fine people of the internet. It is Jeddah here with Mana Beast. Today, doing a deck profile on a special deck. A deck that I like to call the Blue Bomber. It is my blue tag team, Android 16. Now, we're going to do this deck profile a little different than we've done it before. Some of the same, some a little different. You'll see what I mean as I go along. Pretty much I'm going to read the card itself, but I'm not going to go into too much detail. We're going to go do a little overview after we do the actual cards themselves. I'm going to talk about the interactions so that we have a little bit better way to get the deck list out of the way, and then we can do, you know, the interactions and let you know what everything does without spoiling the surprises of what the cards are. So starting off here, we got the blue tag team master. You know how this rolls. At the start of your opponent's first turn, search your life deck for an ally, place it into play at 3 power stages above 0. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then while you control one ally, it cannot be discarded by critical damage effects. Power, use the end of combat, choose an ally in your banish zone and rejuvenate it. Now we're running Android 16, 1 through 4. I will read his levels here and we'll go into a little more detail as we actually go into the deck profile. His level 1, of course, your life deck may include non-personality cards that are heroes only. Then infinite, whenever a player does not declare combat during his combat step, destroy the top card of his life deck. All attacks deal +1 life card of damage. So it's kind of a slow mill. It does mill you and the opponent, but it's a nice way to make them get into combat, still make them mill, and then doing +1 life card for all attacks, even though that hurts you, it hurts your opponent as well. Moving on, level 2, your attacks deal +1 life card of damage. Cards in all life decks without endurance get endurance 1. Power, place a non-personality card that is alignment restricted from your discard pile at the bottom of your life deck to draw a card, which is pretty amazing in this deck, and this is the level we want to be at the entire game. This is the dream level. You want to be at level 2, that's pretty much the level you want to be at the whole game. Now we do have level 3. Your attacks deal +1 life card of damage. Cards in your life deck without endurance gain endurance 1. Power, use on entering combat. Place a card from your hand at the bottom of your life deck to search your life deck for an alignment restricted card and place it into your hand. If that card was a setup or drill, you may place it into play. Again, we'll talk about some of those interactions later as well. And then level 4, your attacks deal +2 life cards of damage. Whenever you play a heroes only card, you may rejuvenate 2. Whenever you play a villains only card, you may banish the top 2 cards of your opponent's life deck. I have never gotten to this level in this deck. In fact, I would be sad if I got to this level. It's neat, but it's really not all that necessary. Your power stages are much lower than they are at the level 3. I don't know, it just, to me, it's a cool, neat effect if I was going for MPPV, but since I'm not, and our goal is to stay at 2, it's not really that big of a deal. All right, so let's go into the cards. Like I said, I'm gonna go into them. I'm gonna just literally start naming them off, and I'm not gonna talk about what they do until the overview part and the detailed deck breakdown. All right, so we are running 2 Android 16s, Tranquility setup. Go to our other setups here. We're gonna run 2 Blue Dominance. We are then gonna run 2 Visiting the Past. We're going to run a single Villainous Visage and an Heroic Plan. All right, let's get into drills. Drills is simple. We're just gonna run an Android attack drill and a blue positioning drill. Very light on the drill package, and I'll get into that more later. All right, let's get into our allies here. We are a tag team. We're gonna run 1 copy of Android 20. We're gonna run Captian Ginyu. Into events, 1 time as a warrior's tool. 2 Villainous Energy Spheres. We're gonna run 3 Confrontation. We are then gonna run, wait, do you guess it? 3 Stare Down. And then we are going to run 3 Blue Shifting Maneuvers. All right, now let's get into the energy combats. Energy combats, we are running a single copy of Withering Fire. We are running Blue Terror. We are running 2 Crushing Beam, 2 Blinding Energy Move, 3 blue Narrow Escape, and 3 Overpowering Attack. Now let's get into the bulk of the deck, which is the physicals. Physicals, we're going to start off with 1 Heroic Dashing Punch, 2 blue Swift Blocks, 3 of Android 16's named attack, Android 16's Rocket Punch, 3 copies of Sinister Choke, 3 copies of Blue Slide, 3 copies of Blue Head Knock, 3 copies of Blue Slash, 3 copies of Android Headbutt, and 3 copies of Blue Betrayal. Now, that's the deck as the cards by themselves, no explanation. So next what I'd like to do actually is go into a detailed breakdown of all the cards and why I run them. If you're just here for the deck list, well, that's it. The deck list is in the video. It's in the link below. You can check that out. But if you're here for a detailed explanation about why we run it and how we run this deck, well, then you're going to want to stay tuned. All right, so now we're getting into the deck breakdown, how we run the deck, and how everything flows within the deck. So let's just start off right now, very simply, with the opening turn, especially your opponent's opening turn. Of course, with the blue Tag Team Mastery, we can fetch out an ally. We do run 2 allies in the deck, and let's talk about them a little bit and why we run them. Now, with the Tag Team Mastery, the main ally we're going to get first turn is going to be Android 20. Why Android 20? Well, simply put, it says on this card, damage from attacks performed by personalities with Android in the title cannot be prevented. When this card is leaving play, all personalities with Android in title lose 3 stages. The reason we're running Android 20 and with Tag Team is to make Android 16 a control/beats deck. That's why I call it the Blue Bomber. There's a whole toolbox of options for you to have control, for you to stop their game, for you to interrupt what they're trying to do, but then also to do some pretty good life card damage consistently. This is not an OTK deck. You're not going to try to kill them in 1 turn. You're going to try to deal consistent time after time damage with Android 16, with the Android 20 out in the field. And of course, with the blue Tag Team Mastery, it makes it much more difficult for them to get them off the field. Now, we do have the recursion of blue Tag Team Mastery, so if they end up banishing it, then we can go ahead and get it out of our banish zone, put it at the bottom of the deck. This is also why we are running, as we talked about before, the 3 Overpowering Attacks. We run these if we can't get Android 20 out of the discard pile because there is no ability with the Tag Team Mastery, and somehow he gets either critted away because there's a second ally, or somehow he gets destroyed by another effect such as the Nappa MP. Now, the other reason we run more than just Android 20 is if we go into a match where we're going against another Android. So if we're going against Android 20, which is going to be the one you're mainly going to see, putting Android 20 on the field, it sounds like a good idea, and it is for a lot of reasons. However, this card can also be a double-edged sword. It's a lot like the Frieza ally. Yeah, they get their damage banished, but so do you. So there is a disadvantage, and then you're not able to prevent their attacks they do to you if they're doing an Android 20, say an Energy Beats deck. So that's where you have to be careful, and that's why we also run Captian Ginyu. If I'm going up against a Android 20 player, or any Android player, I don't want them to be able to do unpreventable damage to me. And with the blue Tag Team Mastery, I'm required to take an ally out. So if I'm required to take one out, the other ally that I really like is Captain Ginyu. Essentially just gives me a good ability to control my opponent because I can see their hand. I can say, hey, I see what you got. I can block and use my stare downs and confrontations accordingly because I know what you got. Now let's go a little bit here into the setups, and I'm going to go kind of describe why I'm running things in the way I'm running them. Now, a lot of times you'll see Android 16's Tranquility run at 3. The reason I don't run it at 3 is because a lot of times it gets cloggy in the deck. It's a great setup to have, don't get me wrong, and I love it on the field, especially going against another kind of control deck. If you're going against a Dragon Ball Victory deck, a Black Mill deck, even a Roshi deck, a red Roshi deck that's trying to mitigate advantage by making slow turns. If it's the end of their planning step and you see they have 2 cards in their hand, force them to go into combat on you. And here's the really cool part about Android 16's Tranquility, and which I really love, is one of my favorite interactions is with Android 16's Tranquility and Visiting the Past. This combo here is really amazing, especially on your opponent's turn. Because let's just say they got a planning step, they drew their 3 cards, they got 4 in hand, and they play 2 cards down on the field. These could be Dragon Balls, allies, drills, or setups, okay? And then at the end of their planning step, they got 2 cards left in their hand. You can then force your opponent to go into combat. First of all, you activate Android 16's Tranquility at the end of your opponent's planning step. Your opponent must declare combat this turn. So your opponent then is forced to declare combat on you. If a Visiting the Past is on the field, then you can tutor out a card from your discard pile, giving you 1 more card on top of the one you already have in your hand. That then lets you draw 3, and a lot of combats I've had some combats where my opponent has 2 cards to my 5, one of which I was able to tutor out with a Visiting the Past. That's where Android 16's Tranquility is really, really powerful. Now, the other reason I only run it at 2 is because I do run another card that's I'm gonna kind of talk to it a little bit about when I talk about my drills. That is Heroic Plan. The reason I only run 2 of them is because I decided to make more room in my deck. Instead of running 3 of Android 16's Tranquility or a lot of the other setups and drills I'm gonna talk about, run Heroic Plan. I run 1 card to tutor out the answer I need at that point, because limit 1 per deck. Banish after use. Power. Search your life deck for a setup, drill, or ally and place it into play. I really love this card because it allows me mid-game to change up my game plan. So let's just say with Heroic Plan, if I'm going against a deck that is going to do a lot of damage to me, and I want to mitigate that, or I want to do it back to him, boom, I pop on Heroic Plan to put into play a Villainous Visage. This card, this combo here is really amazing because I'm in the middle of a combat, I'm going to pop this Heroic Plan, I'm going to put a Villainous Visage in the field, and if you do any life card damage to me, let's say you do a 6 life card damage to me, I'm just going to make you deal 12. So against an aggressive deck, I'm going to pull out something Villainous Visage. If I'm very defensive and have a lot of guard, I'm going to pull out something like Blue Positioning Drill. Okay, I don't want to be guarding a lot. I want to start stacking up stuff on top of my life deck. Pull out a Blue Positioning Drill. If I'm going to go on the offensive, I can go ahead and pull out Android Attack Drill, which is really great because then I'm doing +2 with all my attacks. So that allows me to then also only run 2 copies of Blue Dominance. So right now, instead of running 3 Tranquility and 3 Blue Dominance to make sure I get up to level 2, I run 2 of each and 1 card to tutor out those cards, which also tutors out other cards. So this Heroic Plan can really be considered another Dominance or another Tranquility if I want to get it to the field. That's why I'm running them at 2 and 2, and I feel it's a very suitable ratio while still giving my deck some flexibility. So that's the reason I run the setups that way. Of course, you know, we know all about Android Attack Drill. This is another one of those cards too that you're gonna have to watch going in the Android matchup. A lot of times people are gonna play against you, and if they're an Android themselves, allowing them to do another +1 damage to you can hurt in the end, and it can cost you the game. So there are a lot of plays against other Android decks. You're gonna have to kind of wait on some of these things, especially the Android 20 ally and the Android Attack Drill. As much as you like giving yourself an advantage, there are times you don't want your opponent to have that advantage when you may be in a weakened state or can't block against those attacks. All right, so we've gone over the setups and drills and why we run them in such a way. Let's talk here about the events. Blue Shifting Maneuver. I don't need to say anything more than just Blue Shifting Maneuver. Great card, Endurance 2. From the beginning, this has been one of my favorite cards. Omni Guard. Power, stops a physical or energy attack. If your current anger level is 3, discard after use instead. A lot of times it doesn't happen. This deck isn't really meant to gain anger, and there's not really a lot of anger gaining mechanics in it. So most of the time it's going to be banished after use, but in those rare situations where I'm at 3 anger for some reason, hitting the discard pile and then be able to slap it on top with a positioning drill or with one of the energy guards helps immensely. Now I have changed what I had originally, and this has worked really well for me, and that is the 3 stare downs and the 3 confrontations. Originally, I thought, well, this is too much. Like, why do I want 3 and 3, man? That just seems like too much. You know, it's too much abilities. And I put them down to 2 and 2, and I actually hated it. The deck didn't run all that well. It just seemed to kind of be blah. But Android 16, in my opinion, revolves around 3 stare down and 3 confrontation. It's a disruption deck. It's one that's meant to look at your opponent's hand, disrupt what they're trying to do, get rid of that key card, and then begin to continue your advantage, whether that's attacking them or having more guards against them. You see their hand, you're gonna have Ginyu on the field a lot of times. So either way, I'm looking at your hand and I'm getting rid of those key cards that you're gonna try to get into combat on me. So this is where the 3 and 3, in my opinion, is absolutely necessary. It also works well with his level 2 ability, because then again, we can go ahead and put these at the bottom of our deck. It brings them back in to be able to draw them again later into the game. So in essence, we continue to get stare downs and confrontations to where I've had games where I've used 7 or 8 confrontation / stare downs because I've ended up getting to the bottom of the deck with Android 16 level 2, and it gets in the booty. It gets in the booty, and people don't like it. So we run them at 3 apiece, no doubt. We are running only 2 Villainous Energy Spears. I did pick the Villainous over the Hero. Main reason for me, it's all about disruption and destroying cards. Although this deck isn't an OTK deck, being able to destroy cards off the top of their life deck puts me 1 card closer to killing them all. So a lot of times I'll do that. I'll destroy a card off the top of their life deck. Again, it's just more towards an aggressive build. I know some people run 1 and 1, some people run 2 and 1. I've even some people try to run 4. I think it's a little too much. I think 2 is enough, especially because we are running 3 and 3 of disruption cards to get cards out of their hand. So I think 2 is an appropriate amount. And then of course we are running 1 Time as a Warrior's Tool, because stopping all physical and energy attacks for the rest of combat is, yay, awesome. So, you know, we run it, we're good. All right, let's get into the energy combat cards. First of all, one I just talked about a little bit earlier is Overpowering Attack. This is our other tutoring option. This is really discard retrieval as much as it is anything else. Sometimes I will retrieve Ginyu out of the life deck if I do get this card. However, it puts me in a precarious position because a lot of times I don't necessarily want 2 allies on the field, because then that makes my Android 20 critable. Now, even though that's true, they can crit away one of my allies and they're going to most likely select my Android 20, having Ginyu on the field is still good. And a lot of times, depending on the matchup, I may put both out there. If I'm not going against a deck that's going to be doing a lot of crits or has a lot of ally hate, I'll go ahead and throw both of them out there at once. I'm not really worried about it. So it really just depends on your matchup. Again, it's mainly only meant to get him out of the discard pile. If for some reason he's been destroyed by an effect that wasn't a crit, you want to get Android 20 back out on the field, because when you throw this, best part about it is, you go ahead and put Android 20 on the field, it becomes a 5 life card, unpreventable, which is great. I mean, in my opinion, it adds a little bit more pressure. And then of course, we're talking about Android 16, level 1 and 2, we add 1 more life card to that, making it 6 life cards. We are running 1 Blue Terror because, you know, tutoring any non-Dragon Ball card you want out of your life deck is pretty damn awesome. A lot of times I target things, again, it's really just dependent. That's why, again, call this the Blue Bomber. We have different tools depending on who we're going against. If I want to disrupt your hand, I'll go ahead and get one of my stare downs. I'll go ahead and get one of my confrontations. If I feel I need to be more on the aggressive, then I'm going to go ahead and get Rocket Punch. And no, you don't got a physical guard. I got Ginyu on the field, or I've already gotten a stare down confrontation to see you can't stop a physical. I'm going to throw that, get a card from my life deck, and it just tutors out anything. One of the best cards in the game. We are also running 2 Blinding Energy moves, because as aggressive as we are, Blinding Energy move is the ultimate get out of jail free card. There are some cards coming out in set 6, of course, that say, hey, you know, you can't end combat. And there is the Blue Battle Drill that doesn't allow you to end combat, but not a lot of people run that. Not a very common card to see in this meta. So for me, this is a great card to hold on to if I don't have a time, if I don't have a block, just one of those cards that it really disrupts your opponent when they have that perfect combat, Or again, as I've said before, a lot of times I'll go into combat when maybe I only have 3 cards and they've got a Visiting the Past on the field. I'll let you just banish that Visiting the Past to pick out the perfect card to defend against my onslaught. Throw the Blinding Energy move, banish 2 off the top of my life deck. I'm blue tag team, so hey, if I banish an ally, who cares? In combat, stops them from worrying about activating that when you have a non-opportune time. And again, saves your butts in those combats where you don't have guards. Now let's talk about some of the techs here on the energy. We are running 2 Crushing Beam. Reason we're running 2 Crushing Beam is the main target for Rocket Punch. Really the main combo, and we'll talk about this here a little bit with Android 16's Rocket Punch, is Android 16's Rocket Punch says you must banish a card from your hand to play this card. So first of all, you're losing a card from your hand. Physical attack. You may search your life deck for an alignment restricted card and place it into your hand. Damage, AT life cards. Hit, this attack stays to be in play to be used a second time this combat. Great thing is, since it is staying to be played a second time, we don't have to banish another card from our hand to play the card because it's already in play. So the big combo is Android 16's Rocket Punch to fetch Crushing Beam. Their turn, throw Crushing Beam. Crushing Beam is shuffled back in the deck. Android 16's Rocket Punch, fetch Crushing Beam. Throw Crushing Beam, it's shuffled back into the life deck. This 1 card combo to get out Crushing Beam, if you're at a decent AT stages, even if you're not, let's just say you do 2 stages of life card damage, okay? AT life cards. So you do 1 plus the 2, that's 3 life cards. You're doing 3, 7, 3, and 7. So total, with just this 1 card and Crushing Beam, we're doing a total of 20 life cards of damage. 20 life cards of damage from this 1 card fetching out a Crushing Beam. That's why we run 2. I don't run 3 because we do shuffle them back in. Again, I feel 3 is way too much. I'm really only using Crushing Beam as a target for Android 16's Rocket Punch because it is an alignment restricted card, heroes only. And even if I do banish 1 for endurance, I try not to, mind you, but if I do, I still have 1 in the deck, so I run it at 2. Now let's talk here about our other little odd energy combat techs. We are running 1 Withering Fire. We run the Withering Fire because it is such a cheap attack for what it does. Villains only, so it can be searched out for with Android 16's Rocket Punch. Energy attack costing 2 stages, damage 4 life cards, banish an opponent's drill. Drills in this game are still threatening. Even though Smoothness Drill has been reduced to 1, still threatening. There's a lot of other drills that are going to stop your game, whether it's energy guards from Orange Android 20, whether you've got all the great drills in blue against an opponent, and even by itself. Let's just look at it natively with Android 16, with being at level 2, which is really our dream level. Our dream level is to be at level 2, Android 16, having all of our attacks still +1 life card damage. So then he's doing 5 life cards. And then with Android 20 on the field, it's non-preventable. So it's another attack for us to search out if for some reason something happens to Crushing Beam and we're not able to get it back. And then we run 3 energy combat guards, which is the best in the game in my opinion. Blue Narrowscape, banish after use, endurance 3. Stops an energy attack. Choose 2 energy combat cards in your discard pile and place them on top of your life deck. Again, just helping us to recur cards. Great endurance 3, so when we get hit by attacks, we're on level 2. You know, we get endurance from this, we get endurance from non-endurance cards. We're able to really absorb a lot of damage when we get attacked. All right, so let's talk here about the physicals. We talked a little bit about it with Android 16's Rocket Punch. We're gonna run 3 Blue Slash. Now this deck is a very physically based deck, but it's not a physical AT deck with just stages as much as it is a physical life card deck. So the fact that we do have a few energies in this deck, we're not really gonna wanna pay a lot of stages, and we're gonna wanna do life card damage. We're not worried about the stages. We're not gonna get your stages down, we're gonna do life card damage. So Blue Slash, again, still one of my favorite cards. I've loved it ever since it's come out, and it's still one of my favorite cards to this day. Endurance 1, physical attack damage, 1 life card. Of course, it's gonna be 2 on Android 16 level 1 and 2. Lower your opponent's anger 1 level. Hit, your opponent destroys the top X card of his life deck, X equals 6 minus his current anger level. Again, folks, we're talking about 2 life cards of damage, and at the optimum, milling them 6. I mill 6 quite regularly within this deck just because of the control I have. We are also running blue head knock, which I'll talk about here in a little bit, lowering their anger to 0. That's a great combo. Throw the blue head knock at them, lower them to 0. If they end up raising their anger by 1 somehow, go ahead, play blue slash, lower them back down to 0 anger. So this card is going to essentially do 8 life cards of damage. Now the other 6 are milled, of course, but again, that's more essentially non-endurance. It will mill balls, which is okay because it puts them at the bottom of their life deck. That doesn't allow them to draw it next turn, which is great. So right here we have essentially an 8 life card damage attack with blue slash. Speaking of life card damage, and as we talked about before, we have blue head knock. Great endurance 2, physical attack damage 5 life cards, lower your opponent's anger to 0. So with Android 16, we're doing 6 life cards with this. Again, all non-preventable when we have Android 20 out, 6 life cards of damage, auto crit, and it's going to do 1/10 of their life deck of damage within 1 card. We are then also running blue slide, one of my favorite cards from Perfection for blue in a physical beats deck. Physical attack, banish the top 3 cards of your opponent's discard pile. Great little control. It's kind of like a miniature devastating blow. You just don't get to choose. Damage at +3 life cards. So again, let's look at before AT stages. This is doing 3 life cards. Android 16, level 1 and 2, 4 life cards. And then of course, if we have something like Android Attack Drill, guess what? We're doing 6 life cards nat, even if we're not above or in the same bracket as our opponent. Now Android 16, at level 1, he maxes out at 20,000. Level 2, he maxes out at 900,000. So we do hit some high stages, so even against some of those top meta decks, your cells you're gonna go against, they're gonna have a high power stages, even Broly coming out. A lot of times you'll still be in the same bracket. So naturally, AT is 1, 3 life cards is 3 + 1, 4, + 1 from 16 is 5. The other bonus is hit, your opponent cannot play non-style cards this combat. This is a great card to throw out first, especially if I have Android 16's Rocket Punch. This combo has won me so many games simply for the fact that they don't like the on-hit effect, because it's going to stop their times. It's going to stop their stare downs. It's going to stop any non-style card they're going to want to play, their personality cards. It's going to stop them. So usually they're going to block this attack. They don't want it to hit. Okay, great, it's on hit. Again, we have the other on hit of blue slash. They don't want that to hit, so they're going to guard that as well. So the on hit ability baits guards, and either way I'm getting an advantage. Either you're losing a card to guard with, which opens up other opportunities for blue slash and Android 16's Rocket Punch, or it's gonna hit and you have no guards, and now you can't play non-style cards the entire rest of the combat, which really helps out against a lot of the matches, as non-style cards are quite prevalent. And what do you know? Non-style cards? Did we say non-style cards? Yeah, what about non-style cards? What about stopping your opponent from playing that Sinister Choke they have in their hand? Speaking of blue slide, I've got many games where I've gone against people and they have had a Sinister Choke in hand. In fact, I had somebody who had 2 Sinister Chokes in hand. I hit them with blue slide. The Sinister Chokes are just dead. They can't play them, they can't do anything with them. But we run them because they're a great physical attack. Again, physical attack doing life cards of damage. Android 16 on the field, level 1 and 2. Android 20 is your ally, 6 life cards of unpreventable damage, regardless if they have 7 or more personalities, drills, setups, or Dragon Balls. Moving on, we are going to run 1 heroic dashing punch. This is teched in for the search ability with Android 16's Rocket Punch because it is an alignment restricted card. Heroes only, limit 2 per deck, physical attack. Raise your anger 1 level. Your opponent skips his next action in this combat. For the remainder of combat, life card damage from attacks is banished. So this is really good in the Namekian matchups or decks like another blue mirror match who's going to use things like positioning drill or being able to get cards back. This banishes everything that's going to hit their discard pile. So when you play this attack, especially at the very first of combat, it's really deadly because damage is 5 stages, so it's not a life card. Okay, it doesn't do life cards, but the 5 stages is solid, but hit, your opponent cannot gain anger this combat. So perfect to go against the Namekian deck, perfect to go against a red rush deck that's going to try to gain anger like mad. We prevent them if this hits, and like we looked at before, we've got a lot of on-hit cards in the deck, so at this point, your opponent's going to have to pick their poison. If they're an anger deck and they're worried about your slashes, they're worried about your rocket punches, do they really want that to hit? And a lot of times, you know, you can do funny combos where you search this out with Rocket Punch. You know, if they know you got another on-hit ability and they're gonna have to guard with Rocket Punch, it just goes back to some psychological games. So that's why I take it into one, because mainly it's searchable with Rocket Punch. We are gonna run 3 of the best control card in the game that is a physical attack, but whatever. Blue Betrayal. Damage AT stages, banish an opponent's setup drill or ally in play. Now, Blue Betrayal in this deck is a little more usable. It's a little more feasible because we do hit pretty high power stages. We can do 3, maybe 4 power stages of damage to our opponent, which lowers them down, not being able to do energy attacks. And of course, with Android 16 level 1 and 2, with having the Android attack drill, we can also do some life card damage on top of that. So it adds a little bit of flavor to a card that's normally only in there for control. We are going to run 3, and this card I absolutely love. Android Headbutt. Physical attack, raise or lower player's anger 1 level, so we already got some anger control on the card. Damages 4 life cards. What do you know, with Android 16, we get 5 life cards. You notice a lot of these cards, especially the physical attack, are going to hit the 5 and over threshold. Okay, we're going to hit 5 life cards or more with physical attacks that don't require us to pay any stages. So automatically we already do a critical effect, okay, if this hits. And then hit, you may discard a card from your hand to use a critical damage effect. So against the Red Roshi decks, against the Namekian Piccolo decks, against any kind of ally deck we're going to go against, Ball deck, whatever we're going to go against that critical effects are super useful, there's been key turns where I'll throw this card down because, again, what do you know, another hit effect, more pressure, more getting guards out of your opponent's hands. Throw this card down. If it doesn't hit, okay, that's fine. It wasted a guard. If it does, I'm doing double crit damage to you with no prevention because of our friend Android 20. So that's why we run that at 3. Now let's talk here about a card I mentioned slightly before, which is Android 16's Rocket Punch. This is really, I say, this deck and Android 16 himself really revolves around personality cards, I think more than maybe any other MP in the game, because this card is what will win you the games. And the best part about this is his attack says you must banish a card from your hand to play this card. Physical attack. You may search your life deck for an alignment restricted card and place it into your hand. So this is even before damage is calculated and your opponent has said if they're guarding or not. Now, really one of my favorite things to do, and sometimes my opponents will play a little fast, is a lot of times I've had sometimes I've had opponents who will guard a little too quickly because they know it's Rocket Punch and if it hits, they stop it. Well, if they do, and it's an event, well, then you know what I'm going to be searching out. I'm going to be searching out my friend Villainous Energy Spear and saying no. But most of the good players, most of the top-notch players you're going to go against aren't going to guard early. So I usually throw Rocket Punch and then I'll search for a spear a lot of times. My first move a lot of times is searching for that spear just to get rid of an event. Now if I know they don't have any guards, I know they don't have any cards to counter what I have, well then I'm gonna get out of my deck something like a Stare Down or a Confrontation. But the best part about this is going against decks that have event guards, that have time, hybrid defense, even going against another blue deck that's gonna have shifting maneuver, this automatically shuts them down because I pull this out even before you declare a guard. So you know I have it in my hand. So now you have to either see if I'm gonna waste this card and you're gonna waste your block, because then what's gonna happen is it's gonna hit. So you know it's gonna hit either way. You just have to wonder, well, do I wanna go ahead and make you waste your spear? So it's a really good bit of pressure. Now, if I know they don't have anything in their hands, a lot of time, like we talked about before, we're gonna go back into our Crushing Beam, right? We're gonna throw that Crushing Beam loop and just hit them 2 times with that and do 20 life cards of damage, which is pretty deadly. And then a lot of times, you know, depending on the matchup, if they're a little more aggressive, maybe I know they don't have defense, but they're gonna be aggressive back to me, pull out a Stare Down, make them discard it so they can't do that attack to me. It just gives you a lot of options because the search is even before it hits. And that's what's key to this card, is giving you the ability to play mental games with your opponent, because you're gonna get that card first and they're gonna have to figure out what they wanna do because they know you have that card in your hand. We are using 2 blue Swift Block. Really good physical block. I like it because we are in a meta where there are a lot of popular physical attacks. There are digs we're gonna go against. There are other Sinister Chokes we're gonna go against. the physical meta in the game is very strong. So being able to block a physical attack, then discard a card that may be dead because I am running setups and drills that I may see in my hand, be able to ditch that to just do a Sinister Choke back to my opponent is really, really powerful. So, or, you know, doing a dig to my opponent. Again, another super powerful card that allows me to pull off effects, and it's all around a good tech to run in the deck. So all in all, yeah, that is my Android 16 blue tag team deck profile. This deck has ran really well for me. It is a high control deck that does pinpoint damage to the opponent. You'll notice, again, all talking about life cards. And it's one of those that I don't think a lot of people see the potential in it. I really think it's a great deck. I mean, anytime I go into a match with it, I have yet, if I've been beaten, I've yet to just been blown out of the water, you know? I've yet to have an OTK turn where I just completely get decimated. The other thing about being on Android level 2, no, not 4, I want to be on 2. 2 is that the advantage is, it says here, your attack deal +1 life card of damage. Cards in all life decks without endurance gain endurance 1. However, if we have Android 20 on the field, your opponent's not able to use any endurance. So the neat thing about it is now you're in a hyper defense mode. So not only do we run the high endurance cards like, you know, blue shifting maneuver, we're also able to then have any card in our life deck absorb 1 extra damage. So those turns where we don't really have good hands or we might not have a guard, we prevent that damage. So our opponent can't prevent damage, and then we're preventing extra damage by adding a 1 endurance on every card that doesn't have endurance. Really amazing. And then the level power, just drawing a free card because we rejuvenated an alignment restricted card. So getting back the spheres, getting back the stare downs, getting back the confrontations is absolutely amazing. So that is why we run the dominances at 2, because we want to try to get up to level 2 as soon as possible. And then again, we also run the heroic plan to try to get that out so we get up to level 2 as soon as possible. All in all, really love the deck. Of course, I'd love to hear your opinions, comments, what you would change on the deck. As always, you know, give us some love, subscribe, rate, comment, let us know what you thought of the deck and the channel in general. And good luck to everybody who's going to regionals this weekend and in the weeks to come. We hope this is a nice little surprise you can play around with. And if you end up taking it to regionals, let us know how you did. What did you change? What did you do? How did it perform? Because as always, you know, we want to know if we're sucking or not. We don't want to suck. We don't want to suck. We want to be, as Matthew Combs would say, get good at this game. All right. All right. Thanks as always for checking us out, and we'll see you next time.